Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are getting into a really crucial form of, let's call it emotional engineering.
Hmm.
We're focusing on an emotion that is just universal, it's explosive, and, it's arguably one of the most destructive forces in our personal lives.
Anger.
Anger, exactly. And we are going to be bypassing the typical modern advice, the whole stress management playbook.
Yeah, that's not what this is about.
Instead, we're diving deep into classical ethical texts, specifically from the Islamic tradition. And in this tradition, emotional regulation, it's not a lifestyle choice.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's considered the highest form of personal and I'd say spiritual strength.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It really is. When most people think about anger management now, they're thinking about coping mechanisms.
Right, like counting to 10 or taking a walk.
Exactly. But what our sources show is this incredibly structured methodology for what I'd call emotional mastery.
Mastery, not just management.
Precisely. It's a whole framework, spiritual, psychological, and even linguistic. And it's designed not just to contain your anger, but to actually conquer it at its root.
Wow.
It's a roadmap for building a really solid inner life.
Hmm.
And it's been detailed by prophets and scholars for centuries who just understood that the real battlefield, it's right inside your own heart.
So our mission for this deep dive is to give you, our listener, a kind of shortcut to understanding this profound system. We're going to dissect the linguistic precision that, frankly, reveals the true nature of rage. We'll clarify its moral status, when, if ever, is anger okay?
It's a huge question.
And we'll detail the concrete, actionable techniques that these guides advocated for. This is really unique because it's a blend of psychology, linguistics, theology.
All in one place.
Right.
And it really positions the mastery of yourself as, well, the pinnacle of heroism. So to get into all this, we have to start with the map.
Okay.
Let's define the flame itself, because the language they use tells us exactly what we're dealing with.
I love that. So starting with the language. Classical scholars, they knew that language reflects reality.
Absolutely. If they had a bunch of words for something, it's because they saw a bunch of different kinds of it.
So let's start with the central Arabic root for anger, which is
Gab.
gahab, exactly. And linguistically, its core meaning is just the opposite of satisfaction.
The opposite of satisfaction.
Yeah.
So right away, it's defined by what it's not.
Precisely. It's grounded in displeasure, in fury. But the real depth, and this is where classical Arabic is just so precise, comes from the metaphorical roots.
Okay, tell me more.
The term gappa, which comes from that same root, in its physical sense, actually means a solid rock.
A solid rock. Wow. That's a powerful image. It's not what I was expecting.
Isn't it? It tells you so much. When that emotion hits, it's not fluid, it's not soft or yielding.
It's hard, intense, unmoving. Exactly. It symbolizes that emotional firmness, that intensity of the surge that just takes over a person. The whole linguistic structure, gatiba, yakabu, gataban, describes the process of that rock-like feeling striking the heart.
And before we go deeper, the sources make a really key distinction, one we often miss today, between being angry in a moment and being an angry person.
Oh, this is essential for self-assessment. For you listening, if you want to describe someone who's angry right now, just a temporary state, the adjective is gaban.
Gaban. So that's someone who's very angry, but just in the moment.
Right. But if you're talking about someone with a quick trigger, someone who is frequently angry, where it's become a negative character trait.
A part of who they are.
Exactly. The term is gabyub. And that small linguistic shift from a temporary state to a permanent characteristic, it shows that the scholars saw being gab as a deep ethical flaw. It needs character reform, not just temporary management.
That level of detail is incredible. And it carries right into how they actually defined it, the physiological and psychological reality of rage.
It does.
How did they describe what's happening inside the body when that rock hits?
The general definition is very visceral. It's aggressive. Anger is the eruption of blood in the heart for the purpose of vengeance.
An eruption of blood for vengeance. So they don't separate the physical feeling from the psychological intent.
Never. They're completely linked. Cause and effect. It's not just feeling hot. It's a physical system activating with the goal of inflicting harm in response.
So it's a weapon system, essentially.
You could see it that way.
Yeah.
Al-Jajani gave a very structured, almost medical definition. He called it an internal transformation that's triggered by the boiling of the blood in the heart.
The boiling of the blood, it keeps coming back to that heat, that fire.
And he clarifies the purpose of that boiling. It's specifically to get psychological relief or vindication. You're trying to prevent harm or critically retaliate for something that already happened.
So the core tension is immediately obvious. Anger is natural, maybe even a protective response to a threat.
It can be.
But the second that internal eruption is left unchecked, it morphs from a defense mechanism into a destructive force.
A force designed for imbalance and spiritual ruin. And that destructive potential is exactly why they cataloged it so carefully.
Right, the rich vocabulary.
It's like a precision color palette for rage. They documented whether it was internal versus external, how long it lasted, how severe it was. It's not just a blunt instrument.
Okay, give us some of those examples that show that internal versus external dimension.
Let's start with the internal stuff. You have hurrah. This isn't explosive shouting.
What is it then?
This is that indignant withdrawal, sulking, the silent treatment that's just fueled by this festering resentment.
The passive-aggressive anger.
That's it. The emotional rock is settled, but it's still heavy. Then you have raito. That's just feeling intense internal rage. The furnace is burning, it's suppressed, but it's consuming you from the inside out.
Okay, so that's the slow burn. What about the other end of the spectrum, the explosion?
That would be astasha. It literally means to blaze with anger.
To blaze, like a fire.
Exactly. It's sudden, it's explosive. It signifies a complete rapid loss of control, like a flash fire. And you can compare that immediacy to another term, kianik.
And what's theatic?
That's a deep, long-lasting resentment. This is the grudge you carry for months, maybe years.
Wow.
So the language can distinguish between the immediate explosion of istasha, the quiet internal burning of ito, and the deep, persistent resentment of pianik.
That's a profound psychological study of the human condition right there in the vocabulary.
It is. And we need to spend a bit more time on these shades because this is where our modern language often just collapses all these distinctions into one word.
Which makes managing it so much harder.
Exactly. This is where those classical scholars really shine. You look at a work like Al-Furuq al-Lughawiyya by Abu Hilal al-Askari.
Which means the linguistic differences.
Right. And he didn't just list words. He established these clear lines of, let's call it, emotional jurisdiction. He gives you a level of ethical precision that is just incredibly valuable for self-mastery.
Okay, so let's start with the first pair. Anger, or gahab, versus displeasure, saki. To me, they sound pretty much the same.
To most people, they would. But the boundary is drawn based on authority and power dynamics.
Power dynamics. How so?
Gahab is the general term. It's versatile. It can happen between any hierarchical levels, a child towards a parent, a citizen towards a ruler, between peers. It's democratized anger.
Okay.
But saki, or displeasure, is strictly hierarchical, and it carries a much heavier consequence.
So what does that hierarchy mean in practice?
It means authority. Saki is only used by someone higher in rank towards someone lower.
Ah, I see.
The sources are really specific. You can say the general was displeased, saki with the sergeant, and that often implies a punishment is coming.
A demotion or something.
Right. But it would be linguistically and culturally wrong to say it the other way around. And crucially, when it's used for the divine, Allah was displeased, saki with him, it carries the ultimate weight of consequence.
So the word itself tells you the entire context of power and accountability. If I hear sakit, I know the stakes are high. Gathab could just be road rage.
It's emotional shorthand for power relations, a huge distinction.
Okay, now let's look at another pair. The externally focused anger, gatab, and what you called vexation or guile.
Right. Guy is mainly an inner burning. It's internalized rage, and it's often laced with sorrow or grief. It's the slow cooker emotion.
Okay.
And the critical difference the scholars pointed out is that a person can be vexed with oneself. You can be distressed, internally furious, consumed by rage at your own mistakes or failures.
Wait, so why can't I be angry with myself in the same way? What's the nuance there?
Because gatab, that general anger, it usually implies a desire for vengeance or retaliation.
Which needs an external target.
Exactly. If you're angry with yourself, what are you going to take vengeance on? The desire is usually to reverse the consequence, or the distress is focused on that internal feeling of failure. Gaio captures that self-directed, grief-infused rage perfectly.
That makes so much sense, that frustrating burn you feel when you mess up a big project. That's a totally different emotional category than when a coworker just irritates you.
One is self-directed pain, the other is external confrontation.
Got it. And finally, you mentioned the intensity curve. Anger, gatab versus flaring rage.
Ishtu.
Yes. Ischia sounds violent because it is.
Okay.
It's that sudden, instantaneous flare-up. It's being emotionally set ablaze, losing control rapidly. It's the quick temper, the emotional flash fire.
So it's all about speed and intensity.
And specificity.
Yeah.
The sources note that it's only used for anger, never for sudden joy or fear. It emphasizes the uncontrollability and suddenness of the explosion. It's that moment when the boiling blood we talked about just overflows the container completely.
So by cataloging these different types, the general, the hierarchical, the internalized, the explosive, they gave us an immediate diagnostic tool.
That's it.
If you can name the specific kind of anger you're feeling with this level of precision, you're already halfway to applying the right treatment. It shifts you from being a victim of a vague emotion to being an active cartographer of your own inner world. You can't navigate if you don't know where the fire is burning.
This precision brings us right to the core ethical question. We all know that famous advice, do not get angry. But if it's a universal physiological response, is all anger condemned? This is where the real nuance comes in.
That command is one of the most cited and probably one of the most misunderstood. It's not a call to become an emotional zombie.
Right.
The scholars immediately clarify the intent. Al-Khattabi, for instance, he explained that the command really means avoid the causes that lead to anger.
So it's preventative. It's about spiritual hygiene.
Exactly. And Ibn Rajab went even further. He said that unchecked anger is the root of all evil.
The root of all evil. So what defines this blameworthy anger, this garabun madmum?
It's defined by its source. Is it coming from your ego? From pride? From personal defensiveness? Is it about getting worldly vengeance?
The key test being,
does this anger remove the control of reason and religion from my actions? If the answer is yes, if it leads to irrationality, injustice, sin, it's condemned. It's self-serving.
that makes perfect sense. It's that moment the rational mind is just blinded by the suffocating smoke of rage. The anger is for my honor, my property, my wounded pride.
Then it's a danger. It's an internal takeover.
Yeah.
Blameworthy anger is a spiritual intoxication. The furious person is acting on whim, not on reasoned judgment.
But the sources carve out a necessary exception. They recognize that sometimes that emotional fire has to burn in defense of what's right.
It does.
So what defines the praiseworthy anger, the gakun mamdu?
This is the righteous ethical response. It's anger that is specifically for the sake of God.
Yeah.
It's triggered when sacred laws are violated, when truth is denied, or when the weak and oppressed are being wronged.
And crucially,
It must be controlled, justified, and focus entirely on upholding a principle, never on satisfying a personal desire or ego.
Okay, but this raises a critical question. How do we, as just normal human beings, make sure that our anger for the sake of truth doesn't just become a fancy excuse for our own ego?
That is the ultimate test, isn't it? And the answer they give lies in the example of the Prophet Muhammad himself.
The litmus test.
The litmus test was his consistency. He never became angry for his own sake. Personal insults, material wrongs against him, they were always met with patience and forgiveness. The energy of Ghadab was saved only for transgressions against divine truth or justice.
That separation of self and principle, that's the whole mechanism. His face would change, his veins would swell, the physical signs were there, but the direction of the emotion was always external and principled.
Exactly. Look at the examples. He was famously angered when he saw inappropriate images in his house. His face changed color, he tore down the curtain, and he gave a severe warning. The anger was immediate, but it wasn't directed at a person for a personal offense. It was about the violation of a divine ruling.
And the example of the prayer being too long, to us, that might seem like a small detail. Why did that provoke such a sharp, praiseworthy anger?
Because the long prayer was creating a burden on the community. He said, "Some of you are driving others away. Whoever leads people in prayer should keep it brief, for there are the elderly, the weak, and those with needs." His anger wasn't about impatience. It was about protecting accessibility, about making sure worship didn't become an unjust burden. It was anger in defense of merciful leadership.
So the praiseworthy anger it's altruistic and governed by reason, while the blameworthy anger is egocentric and governed by that physiological surge.
And the scholars all reinforce this. Al-Baji, for example, said that anger in defense of truth, when you're confronting clear falsehood, might even be considered obligatory, a wajib,
A moral necessity.
a sign that your heart is still alive to what's right.
But again, the control has to be there. The moment it spills over into irrational action, even if the source was righteous, it risks slipping right back into being blameworthy. And when that line is crossed, when anger becomes selfish and uncontrolled, the sources paint a devastating picture. It's a total deformation of the self.
It's a profound violation of your own dignity.
Ah.
Physically, the angry person is instantly recognizable. Shaking limbs, bloodshot eyes, disordered gestures, a truly deformed facial expression.
It's like a different person.
Evan Miskaway likened the raging person to a drunk or a madman. In that moment, they are incapable of rational human interaction.
And the physical signs might be temporary, but the verbal damage is often permanent.
The mouth becomes the main weapon. Uncontrolled emotion leads to verbal abuse, profanity, obscenity, and often just unintelligible speech. A torrent of words chosen purely to destroy.
This is why that command for silence is so important, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Absolutely. The tongue, in a moment of rage, causes these long-lasting scars, not to mention legal consequences.
And then the actions that follow can be catastrophic. Assault, even murder. And that self-destructive rage, smashing things, hitting walls.
Yes, or even striking animals or furniture. But the truly corrosive harm is the spiritual damage, the internal corruption.
It's not an isolated incident.
No, it becomes this fertile ground for a whole suite of other vices. Malice, jealousy, mockery, and the profound moral failing of delighting in other people's misfortunes.
You actually start to wish harm on others.
Which is the polar opposite of the spiritual peace and generosity you're supposed to cultivate.
And Ibn Rajab gave that severe warning about the worldly consequences too.
He did. He said, uncontrolled anger leads to so many forbidden actions and words, and it often ends in long-term regret. Things like unintended divorce or just severe spiritual deviation that can destroy a person's entire path.
The spiritual metaphor from Raghib al-Isfahani really clarifies this internal corruption brilliantly.
Oh, it's perfect. He described anger as a fierce blaze that ignites in the heart. But this blaze doesn't just burn.
What does it do?
It fills the hardened brain with dark, suffocating smoke.
And that smoke is the key. It's what paralyzes the intellect.
Exactly. When your intellect is blinded by this smoke, your soul is cut off from truth and reason. He compares the angry person to someone trapped in a narrow cave that's filled with choking flames. You can't breathe, you can't think, and any advice just feeds the fire because that rational channel is completely closed.
And this leads to that ultimate spiritual warning, that anger is momentary madness.
And that it turns the furious person into an obedient servant of Satan.
A moment of voluntary surrender.
That's it. Satan's victory is when he can hijack the human intellect. The angry person stops being a moral agent guided by principle and becomes an automaton driven by pure destructive impulse. That's the ultimate spiritual risk.
To make this less abstract, the sources give us this incredible story of the Ghassanian king Jabala ibn al-Ayham.
A truly dramatic illustration of how pride fueled by anger can just destroy a lifetime of virtue.
Tell us that story. It's so powerful.
Okay, so Jabala was a powerful king who had embraced Islam. He's performing the pilgrimage during the time of Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab. And while he's there, a common man accidentally steps on his road, causing him to trip. And Jabala, in this surge of princely rage, immediately strikes the man.
The king, used to absolute power, feels disrespected by a commoner. The insult must have felt massive to him.
Absolutely. He demanded swift, royal retribution. But Caliph Umar applied the foundational Islamic principle of equality before the law.
Kita.
Exactly. He ruled that since the king struck the commoner was entitled to strike the king in return. No special treatment for royalty.
And Jabala was enraged, not by the original offense, but by the loss of his perceived status.
His inability to control his wounded pride had these immediate, catastrophic spiritual consequences. He just could not accept that he was equal to a common man in the eyes of God and the law.
So his fury over this one single offense,
fueled by ego, that he had to accept a commoner's slap. It was so immense that he rejected the entire system of justice. He renounced Islam, fled in the dead of night to the Roman Empire, and became a Christian. He destroyed decades of spiritual commitment, his wealth, his status, all over a single moment of uncontrolled rage rooted in pride. It's the ultimate cautionary tale.
It shows that anger, when driven by the ego, doesn't just damage relationships. It can obliterate your entire moral and spiritual foundation.
Which is why we have to understand the fuel that feeds that fire.
Right. The story of Jabala shows that anger isn't just a reaction. It's often a symptom of something deeper, some kind of internal rot.
That's the psychological insight. The anger is just the expression of an underlying moral disease.
And the primary cause listed is pride and conceit.
Always. Anger surfaces when a person's perceived superiority is challenged or disrespected. They cannot tolerate being treated as an equal, let alone being wronged.
So anger in that context is often just a defense mechanism for a fragile ego.
100%. The ego demands constant validation. When that's denied, when the proud person is mocked or ignored, the anger is explosive because the very foundation of their identity feels threatened.
And we also see the role of material desires.
Oh, massively. Greed and envy are huge contributors. The sources specifically mention intense eagerness for excessive wealth and status.
So when the greedy person sees someone else get what they want,
The frustration fuels this tremendous, often silent gaio, that internal vexation that eventually just has to erupt as gatab. Then you've also got obstinacy, that stubborn need to be right, which generates fury when you're logically defeated.
it's clear that all these causes, pride, greed, envy, are moral defects. But we have to talk about the self-deception the sources warn against. So many people mistake the expression of anger for strength.
This is the most dangerous cultural myth.
Mm.
And the sources point out that many people, especially the unlearned, they falsely label anger as courage or dignity or nobility.
They see the explosion as proof of power.
Exactly, especially physical power or social authority. But the classical ethical correction is so emphatic.
What does it say?
It says anger is not strength. It's a symptom of weakness and a flawed soul and intellect. The prophet's famous saying, "The strong one is not the one who can overpower others. The strong one is the one who controls himself when he is angry."
So true strength is defined by emotional control and patience. Outbursts are just the self-surrender of a weak temperament.
It takes far more internal fortitude to stand firm against that boiling blood and that desire for vengeance than it does to just lash out. The physical act is easy. The internal battle is the true measure of character.
So to help us figure out where we stand on that spectrum of character strength, scholars like Al-Ghazali identified specific groups who are more prone to a quick temper.
Right, often linked to weaker self-control or just their physical state.
Who did they list and what was the thinking behind it?
Well, they identified several groups. Children, obviously, due to immaturity. The elderly, because they often lack the physical resilience and patience of middle age. They also specifically mentioned the greedy and the miserly.
Because their intense attachment to worldly things makes them react with rage when their wealth is threatened.
Exactly. And the sick, of course, whose physical state just makes them less resilient to stress. Now, while there was some social categorization, reflecting the cultural context, the core focus was always on the psychological and physical state that led to less self-control.
This brings us to the most detailed classification, the 4 human temperaments, provided by the prophet himself.
A really powerful, concise framework for self-assessment.
Because it classifies people not just by how fast they ignite, but how fast they recover.
It's essential. This hadith moves us beyond just labeling and gives us a goal for self-improvement. Let's break down the 4 quadrants, using that classical analogy of fire and fuel to understand them.
Okay, let's start with the 2 moderate categories, the less extreme ones.
The first is quick to anger, quick to calm.
Mm.
This person is easily provoked, the anger ignites fast, but they recover just as quickly.
So it's a mix of a flaw and a virtue.
Right. Al-Rakib compared this temperament to dry wood. It catches fire fast, but it burns out quickly. The internal damage is contained because the resolution is so rapid. The great virtue here is the lack of grudges.
Okay, and the second moderate category is almost the mirror image and maybe more dangerous internally. Slow to anger, slow to calm.
This person shows patience at first, which is a definite virtue. They're hard to provoke.
What?
But once that anger is finally roused, it festers. The slowness to calm shows deep resentment, grudges, and unwillingness to forgive. This is psychologically destructive. This is like a massive, dense tree that takes forever to ignite.
But once it does, it burns for days.
Or weeks or years. The long-term harm is immense. This is that deep-seated anik we talked about earlier, a terrible spiritual trait.
Okay, now let's hit the 2 extremes.
The worst temperament, the most harmful to everyone, is quick to anger, slow to calm.
The explosive personality whose rage just lingers.
Exactly. Easily set off, and their anger festers for a long, long time, consumed by vengeance and spite. It's a highly destructive combination. You maximize the damage of the eruption and minimize the chance for resolution.
And finally, the ideal, the virtuous goal we should all be aiming for.
The best temperament, the most virtuous and powerful category is slow to anger, quick to calm.
Deliberate, patient, highly controlled.
And if they are provoked, especially for a righteous cause, they quickly return to peace and forgiveness. They prevent anger from taking root as malice. And the Prophet presented this not just as an observation, but as a roadmap.
The whole point is to systematically move yourself from whatever category you're in now toward that goal.
To become slow to anger and quick to forgive.
So if the 4 temperaments are the diagnosis, the classical texts give us the prescription. And this part is the most critical for you listening at home. These are concrete, actionable steps, a spiritual toolkit.
A high-fidelity toolkit.
Let's start with the immediate spiritual firewall, the first step in anger management.
Right. So since we've established that anger is fundamentally a tool of Satan to blind the intellect, the first and most critical command is to immediately seek refuge in Allah.
A'udhu billahi min ash-shaitan ir-rajim.
Exactly. The Quran is explicit. If a whisper from Satan causes anger in you, seek refuge in Allah. This is an immediate cognitive stopgap. You're actively declaring, I will not surrender my agency to this destructive impulse.
The second step is purely behavioral, but it's probably the hardest one to do when your blood is boiling.
Silence.
Silence.
It's a practical masterstroke. The command is, if one of you gets angry, let him be silent. As Ibn Rajab noted, this is a great remedy because the angry person says things they regret forever.
Verbal abuse, profanity, rash legal statements.
Like divorce. If they just remain silent, that entire chain of verbal destruction is avoided. It limits the harm of the moment to your own internal experience.
Okay, third, we move to a physical and spiritual cooling process, wudu or ablution.
Here the logic is both metaphorical and physiological. The Prophet explained, anger is from Satan, and Satan was created from fire. And fire is extinguished with water.
So when you get angry, perform wudu.
The physical application of cool water to your face, hands, arms, feet. It serves as a physical shock. It disrupts that surge of heat and blood that defines rage. It's a physical intervention and a spiritual cleansing at the same time.
The fourth step deals with posture, changing your position.
This is ancient behavioral psychology. The command is sequential. If you're standing, sit down. If you're sitting, lie down.
Why?
Because the body prepares for aggression when it's standing. This physical change actively disrupts that aggressive impulse. It makes physical confrontation way less likely, it forces a pause, and it reduces the physiological intensity. You are physically removing yourself from a position of power.
Okay, and the last 2 steps are totally cognitive. They're about the long game.
Right. Remembering Allah and the consequences and focusing on forgiveness. This is the internal battlefield. You interrupt that self-justifying monologue of rage by engaging in deep reflection.
You remind yourself of God's patience with your flaws.
And you consider the long-term spiritual risks of raging over some fleeting worldly offense. And that has to be balanced with the reward for control.
Which has to be a powerful counterbalance to the immediate satisfaction of revenge.
It's the ultimate incentive. You remind yourself of that magnificent reward. Those who control their anger and forgive others. Allah loves the doers of good. The fleeting, shameful satisfaction of revenge just pales in comparison to earning divine love.
It's a total reevaluation of your priorities, shifting from earthly vindication to eternal reward.
Exactly. These 6 steps are a profound toolkit. And to really see their power, you have to look at the great practitioners who executed them flawlessly under immense pressure.
The companions and the successors.
Let's take the example of Umar ibn al-Khattab. It shows how scripture can instantly disrupt your cognitive state. A man came to him and accused him of injustice in public. And Umar, a man of immense authority, was visibly enraged that blood eruption was happening.
What broke the cycle?
An attendant immediately intervened, reciting the Quranic verse, "Hold to forgiveness, command what is right, but turn away from the ignorant."
And what happened?
The sources say Umar immediately calmed down, as if a fire was just extinguished inside him. He submitted his personal justified rage to the higher command of revelation.
We also see the wudu technique being used in public by Muawiyah.
Yes, Muawiyah was giving a sermon, a moment of maximum public dignity, and a man shouts, "You lie!" A massive public insult.
Meant to cause rage.
And Muawiyah was visibly angered, but he didn't retort. He left the pulpit, performed wudu, and came back. He then calmly explained to everyone, anger is from Shaytan. Put it out with water. He used his own anger as a teaching moment.
That's incredible. And the example of Abu Dhar al-Ghifari is just next level emotional alchemy.
It really is. His servant intentionally provoked him, but Abu Dhar transformed a potential sin into this radical act of piety.
No.
The servant messed up the horse fodder, a significant mistake, just to test his master. And when Abu Dhar asked why, the servant confessed, "I wanted to anger you."
And instead of punishing him.
Abu Dhar replied, "Then I shall combine anger with reward. You are now free for the sake of Allah." He recognized that the greatest spiritual reward available to him in that moment, freeing a person, was a far more valuable transaction than the worthless satisfaction of punishment.
He leveraged the test for maximum spiritual gain. That is the essence of mastery.
Taking a moment of potential destruction and converting its energy into goodness.
And finally, the story of Ali ibn al-Hussein, which shows that three-stage process of forgiveness from the Quran.
Yes, his servant accidentally dropped a jug of water and injured his face. Pain and provocation. The servant, recognizing the danger, immediately started reciting that three-part verse on dealing with aggression. Those who suppress anger.
And Ali, hearing this, immediately responded,
"I have suppressed my anger."
The servant continued the verse, "And those who pardon people."
And Ali responded, "I have pardoned you." Then the servant, pressing the spiritual advantage, concluded with the highest stage. And Allah loves the doers of good.
And Ali concluded the whole interaction by setting her free.
Bro, you are free for the sake of Allah. He transformed pain and provocation into monumental generosity, escalating his response at each ethical stage. It's the definition of turning anger into an opportunity for virtue.
And we see that focus on eternal accountability over temporary power in Umar ibn Abdulaziz.
A man publicly insulted him, and Umar just calmly replied, shifting the focus completely away from his own ego. He said, "You want Satan to provoke me, so I treat you unjustly today, and you take from me on the day of judgment. Go, may Allah have mercy on you."
He made the aggressor realize that his own goal was preserving his eternal reward, not wielding temporal power.
These powerful models, they show us the challenge isn't to eliminate the feeling of anger. That's impossible.
It's to control the response, to ensure the emotion serves as a catalyst for kindness or restraint or justice, never for personal destruction.
True heroism is absolutely internal. As the sources say, the most intelligent is the one who doesn't hold grudges, and the most ready with an answer is the one who doesn't get angry. Mastery requires diligence and relentless practice.
This has been an incredibly deep and detailed exploration. We've moved from the rigid linguistic firmness of the word gab through the moral necessity of praiseworthy anger and all the way to this highly actionable toolkit.
And the core message is clear. Anger is the enemy of the intellect. True strength lies not in conquering others, but in conquering your own rage.
The promise of controlling that inner fire, it preserves sincerity, strengthens relationships, increases clarity, and brings divine reward. The best are truly those who have successfully shifted their temperament to be slow to anger and quick to forgive.
And we covered those 4 human temperaments in detail.
The quick to anger, quick to calm, the slow to anger, slow to calm, that grudge holder, the quick to anger, slow to calm, the most destructive one. And of course, the virtuous, slow to anger, quick to calm.
So we'll leave you with a final provocative thought, something concrete to mull over this week.
Okay.
Think back to that prophetic classification. What category do you currently fall into? Be honest with yourself. And based on that practical guidance we detailed, what is the one single management technique?
Just one.
Just one. Whether it's the physical act of changing your position, the spiritual shield of seeking refuge, or the verbal defense of silence, what is the one thing you can commit to practicing diligently this week to shift yourself one step closer to that best temperament?
Start small, but commit completely.
That's the key.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mastery of anger. We'll see you next time.